I have to go with my mom first, so use this money to get to the hospital. My husband gives me $20 suddenly, and I'm surprised. I can only stare as he drives away, leaving me alone while I'm in labor. Shockingly, he prioritized picking up his mom for her lessons over being with me during this crucial time. Despite his mom constantly putting me down, I tolerated it for the sake of our unborn child. But now, I realize someone who neglects their child doesn't deserve to be a parent. Despite the pain, I decide to face childbirth alone. I'm Catherine. I married Bob, who is 3 years older, right after college. We had a reasonably happy life. Bob was a senior in my college club, and he fell for me when I joined as a freshman. Looking back, I blush at how passionately he pursued me. When you're young, someone being older can make them seem cool. I reciprocated Bob's advances, and we dated smoothly until my graduation. Even after we got married, Bob remained deeply in love with me, and I never worried about him being unfaithful. He consistently left work on time, went straight home, and enjoyed the dinners I prepared. He even boasted about our happiness at work. I thought no woman would approach a man so devoted. Although Bob was always kind to women, I trusted his dedication to me, so my attention never strayed. However, our seemingly smooth relationship had a hiccup: my mother-in-law. I thought issues between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law were outdated, but when she first saw me, she frowned and criticized my appearance. She commented on my hair, accusing me of hastily dyeing it to look innocent. It was embarrassing, and I wished she had expressed her concerns more kindly. This happened during my first visit to my in-laws before the wedding, and it left me feeling terrified and mortified. Despite my efforts to fix my hair color the day before, she saw through it. Though I made an etiquette mistake, I wished for a gentler approach. Being virtually kicked out of my in-laws' home on my first visit, separated from Bob because of my hair color, I was downcast. Later, Bob reassured me, saying his mom was just nervous and came off a bit harsh, insisting that she really did like me. "Don't worry. She's on board with our marriage and wants you to visit again," Bob said in a nonchalant tone, which irritated me. She insulted me in front of him, and now he seemed to be defending her. I couldn't shake the feeling that her invitation wasn't genuine. Was she planning to make us live with her and subject me to constant criticism? Despite my concerns, when we did get married, my mother-in-law didn't suggest such a living arrangement. I felt relieved, but it didn't last long as she started frequently calling Bob to come over. He's done with college and got a job back home, and now he's married all of a sudden. I've been so lonely. Why don't you let Catherine have a break and come stay with me for about a week? I was surprised to see such emails addressed to Bob. Showing me the message, Bob asked for my opinion. Without waiting for him to answer, I called my mother-in-law and explained, "I appreciate your concern, but we still have unpacking and paperwork to do. It'll be a while before he can take a break. I'm sorry." In response, she insisted, "You can do the unpacking yourself. Don't always rely on my son." I nodded and ended the call. It felt like she was pretending to care about me, but her real motive was to have her son by her side. Was there no consideration for a newlywed couple? I felt frustrated with my inconsiderate mother-in-law and upset with Bob, who went along without resisting. He explained that his mother had always been overprotective, especially after separating from his father. When he decided to go to college, she tried to stop him, even crying. Though he managed to convince her, they maintained nightly communication through emails or phone calls. While I admired their close relationship, I began to question if there should be some appropriate boundaries, given that they were both adults. Despite this, I recognized that every family has its dynamics, and it wasn't fair to judge. One weekend, my usually late-sleeping husband surprised me by waking up early to go shopping with his mom. She wanted his opinion on buying clothes, and he promised her first, leaving me upset. I suggested doing something together on our day off, but he insisted on keeping his promise to his mom, who was waiting outside. Rushing to the entrance in my pajamas, I saw my mother-in-law's red car parked outside. With a sly smile, She teased me for still sleeping at that hour and suggested getting me an alarm clock as a gift. Laughing, she took my husband's hand and led him away cheerfully. I was dumbstruck, watching their intimate interaction as they drove away. After that incident, I noticed changes in my husband. He almost stopped doing the household chores he used to handle regularly and began visiting his parents' house almost every weekend. His attitude towards me turned more demanding, criticizing my habits. He claimed I was lazy and not fulfilling my duties as a housewife, even suggesting I visit my parents. I never knew what my mother-in-law said about me, but my husband seemed influenced by her. He never complained about my naps or lack of makeup when we were dating, but now he echoed his mother's concerns. Considering how my mother-in-law treats my husband like her boyfriend, it felt like she was just trying to annoy me. I had hoped things would improve when we had a child, but my doubts about my husband increased. Soon after I found out I was pregnant, my husband was thrilled, expressing joy and support. However, my mother-in-law's harassment escalated. She frequently called my husband for trivial matters like shopping, doctor visits, or house cleaning, leaving me pregnant and alone. When I tried to explain to my husband that his mother's actions seemed malicious towards me, it didn't go well. He got suddenly furious, insisting that his mom cares and suggests I spend more time with my parents. He warned me that getting upset like this would affect our baby and urged me to accept his mom's care. After that, he frequently left me alone. As my morning sickness worsened, I expressed my need for his support, but he dismissed it, saying his mom wanted to be alone during her pregnancy too. Feeling physically and mentally drained, I decided to face the challenges on my own. On a day we were shopping for baby items, we unexpectedly ran into one of my husband's colleagues. The colleague praised Bob for attending parenting classes and being excited about becoming a dad. Surprised, I blurted out my frustration, but Bob quickly downplayed it with a sheepish grin. It turned out he had been portraying himself as an enthusiastic, soon-to-be dad at work, even making up stories. Although I stayed silent to avoid an argument, my anger started to build up. Despite my feelings, he continued to prioritize errands with his mother-in-law, and when we met his colleagues, they would envy me, saying, "Catherine, you've got yourself a dream husband." Over time, this behavior eroded my trust in Bob's actions and words. I can't confirm if the stress triggered it, but one weekend, while making lunch, I noticed my pants were wet. The realization hit me, my water had broken. I urgently called to Bob, still asleep, telling him to prepare the car immediately. Bob, initially groggy, quickly grasped the situation, turning pale and rushing to assist me. The nurse had emphasized heading straight to the hospital if my water broke, and understanding the potential urgency, Bob started to panic. As we were finally in the car and on our way, with contractions starting, Bob's phone rang. Unable to pick up while driving, I, fighting through the pain, saw Linda, his mother's name on the screen. A sinking feeling washed over me. For a while, the ringtone persisted, and thinking it might be quicker to explain, I reluctantly answered, "Bob, where are you? Remember, today is our weekly knitting class. Did you forget?" The cloying voice, usually absent when speaking with me, sent shivers down my spine. I explained my situation to my mother-in-law. My water just broke, and I'm on my way to the hospital with Bob. Her response shocked me. She yelled at me, saying it had nothing to do with her, and accused me of using her son as a taxi service. Even when I remained silent, her shrill voice persisted. "Can I speak to Bobby? I've got my weekly sewing class today, and I had this planned first." I was speechless. Not only did she not care about her grandchild's welfare, but she also outright said so. "I'm sorry, Catherine," my husband said quietly. At first, I thought he was apologizing for his mother's outburst, but then I realized he was opening the back seat door where I was lying down. Confused and in intense pain, I had no idea what he meant. He then said, "I promised to drop off my mom, so can you call a taxi or an ambulance from here? I'll catch up with you, promise." "Hold on a second." You're prioritizing her sewing class over your own child. I can't convince her, so you've got to talk to her. It's getting more painful. We need to hurry. Frustrated, I raised my voice as my patience wore thin. But my husband grimaced and justified. It's a weekly thing. Can't be helped, right? I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you about it. Here's some money. Try to manage with this. He handed me $20 from his wallet, then returned to the driver's seat and drove off without hesitation, leaving me not far from home. This couldn't be happening. Left near our house, mindful of the neighbors, I quickly looked up a taxi service. Meanwhile, I felt the amniotic fluid flowing between my legs. Panicking for our baby's safety, tears welled up as I struggled with my phone. Neither the baby nor I deserve this, Catherine. Suddenly, I heard my name being called. I turned and saw a familiar face. You look so pale. No time to chat. Get in the car now. This kind person helped me into the back seat, and her husband adjusted the front seat for my comfort. The rest was a blur. Upon arriving at the main hospital, they quickly wheeled me into a room prepared by the nurses. Despite the intense pain, I was told I still had some time before giving birth and should rest. The agony was so overwhelming that at times I felt like passing out. Then my phone rang. Thinking it might be my mother returning my call, I discovered it was my husband. Looking at the clock, nearly 3 hours had passed since my water broke, and I was appalled that he was just arriving at the hospital. Annoyed, I decided not to answer, but he persisted in calling until I reluctantly picked up. Catherine, help me. I need you to explain the situation for me. It would have been comforting if he had shown some concern for me. I don't know what's going on with my husband, but even if he were in danger, he had no right to seek my help after abandoning our child. Who do you think you are? How dare you say something like that? I shouted at him over the phone and abruptly hung up. Shortly after, I went into labor alone. It would have been reassuring to have a supportive husband during such a crucial time. However, if a clueless husband incapable of prioritizing is present, maybe it's better if he stays away. Instead, I found solace in the caring presence of a nurse, and late that night, my long-awaited baby safely arrived. Both the baby and I were healthy. Exhausted after giving birth, I fell asleep immediately. The next morning, the nurse informed me that my husband had finally arrived, having come right after the birth. Being in a deep sleep, the nurse kindly turned him away. Honestly, I thought I wouldn't want to see him again. However, when he walked into the room looking worn out, curiosity got the better of me, and I asked what had happened the day before. The kind older lady from the neighborhood, who had always supported me, picked me up and took me to the hospital when she learned about my distress, given that her son was around my age. She had been my pillar of support since my early days of marriage when I felt insecure. When she learned about my husband dropping off his mother for her hot classes, she became furious on my behalf. Little did I know that her anger would escalate the situation. After dropping me off at the hospital, she apparently spread the word throughout the neighborhood. As the head of the local community association, she had significant influence, and her friends confronted my husband en masse. The situation became so chaotic that rubberneckers gathered around our house, seeking my assistance. In this turmoil, he clearly displayed his lack of intelligence. Despite receiving no calls from my mother-in-law, I had already made up my mind. Can you please leave? I'm not feeling well, and my parents will be here soon. They know about this, right? In a pitiful tone, my husband mumbled, I want to apologize. Can I stay? Annoyed, I responded, I don't care if you want to apologize. I'll be busy, so leave, please. Ignoring my cold response, he persisted, by the way, where's our baby? Let me see him once, and then I'll leave. Fed up, I instructed him. Just go. There are other expecting mothers here, so get out. Unfazed by my dismissal, he lingered. So I turned my back, pulled the covers over myself, and ignored him. Hey, I'm sorry. Can you at least call my mom? I want to send her a picture of the baby. Should I call a nurse? My husband reached out and shook me. Unable to tolerate it any longer, I was about to push him away when my parents entered the room. My mom rushed to my side, pushing my husband away, and exclaimed, "What are you doing? Don't touch her." Filled with anger, she scolded him. "How dare you shake a woman who's just given birth? After what you did, how dare you show your face here? I'm so disappointed in you. Get out now." Even I had never seen my mom so furious. My husband finally left the room, intimidated by her, and my dad followed him out, surely giving him a piece of his mind. During my hospital stay, I refused to see my husband. After being discharged, I took the baby and went to my parents' house. Fearing potential harm, I brought up the idea of divorce over the phone. From now on, I'll be proceeding with the divorce through a lawyer, I informed him, along with the claim for damages. I disregarded any objections from him. The damages referred to the scratches and bruises I got when he forcefully pulled me out of the car. Despite his attempts to make excuses, I presented testimony from the neighborhood lady and her husband, along with photos of the injuries from that day. He fell silent. My lawyer suggested that, considering the gross misconduct towards a pregnant woman, the compensation might be substantial. While occupied with caring for the baby, my mother-in-law, Susan, once stormed into my family home. The rumors spread by Catherine didn't die down easily, and the neighbors' looks were chilly. She blamed me for not respecting their family, but my intimidating father took charge. He drove both mother and son away, and at times I wondered if we should have done this from the beginning. However, my dad insisted that the head of a family doesn't easily step into the limelight trying to sound cool about it. As I got the hang of parenting, I invited the neighborhood lady to my home and introduced her to my parents. She quickly became friends with my mom since they were of the same age, and they decided to stay in touch. The neighborhood lady shared a story she heard from a friend who works part-time at my ex-husband's company. This friend, like her, enjoys gossip and seems to have shared the ex's story with others. At some point, the tale spread and got exaggerated, damaging his reputation severely. Posing as a devoted new dad and husband, the backlash was significant, leading him to quit his job. Approaching 30, jobless, and without professional certifications, he seemed to be living modestly, relying on his mother's retirement funds and savings, becoming somewhat of a recluse due to the community's judgment. A few years later, I received a call from him, someone I had almost forgotten about. "Hey, where are you? I'm outside your family home right now." His rude greeting prompted me to respond in kind. "I've moved. What do you want?" "You moved? Living it up with the compensation money I gave you, huh? Must be nice. Come back right now. Let's start over. Mom wants to see you too." "Your ramblings make no sense. Why would I go back to you? Are you still going on about Mom after all this time? Don't call me again. I don't want to hear it." I hung up without waiting for a response, and for a while, my phone kept ringing. When I finally managed to block his calls, he began flooding me with texts, begging for reconciliation. I read them just to be sure, but they were filled with nonsense like, "Don't you think it's sad for a child not to have a father? And even though you owe so much to Mom, not letting her see the child is utterly disrespectful." I deleted all of them and changed my email address. Though this whole incident was a nightmare, it allowed me to proceed with the divorce advantageously and take appropriate action against him. If a family member is going to be such trash, it's better for my child that they're not in our lives. I find comfort in this thought as I enjoy parenting supported by my parents, who have now become loving grandparents.